everybody, welcome back to this week's Coach's Corner. Today we're going to talk about in-season versus off-season in the strength sports, and we have a friend here. Robert has finally made it down here, and so he will be joining us each week for our Coach's Corner, and you get to benefit from his wisdom because he's old. All right, Ryan.
So, in-season versus off-season. First off, in-season is your competition prep. You are getting ready to compete. It can be anywhere from, we'll say 3 months out to, we'll say a week out. It's all just depends on whatever your in competition prep is. Off-season is when you don't have a competition coming up for a couple of months and you're not specifically working towards that competition goal.
So does that matter depending on what sport they're in, or is it just for like powerlifting, strongman type of thing?
It depends upon whatever the sport is.
Okay.
So for powerlifting, usually it does depend because you're going to want to do more technique work versus trying to build all that raw strength. You kind of want to get everything to come all together at the very, very end for your in-season. Off-season, you're trying to build a lot of strength. You're trying to refine a couple things, but your main point is just to build the strength and keep yourself nice and healthy. For a sport like football is you're getting faster and stronger and bigger in the off season, and then during the season you are competing every weekend, so you're modifying your training to be able to compete during the weekend, not every day of the week.
Okay, so I'm assuming there's some benefits to having off season. What do you think, Robert?
That's what I was wanting to know is like, why have an off season? Like, why not just stay on season all the time?
So for a quick analogy, if you race your race car 110%, push 110% all the time, what's going to happen? Probably going to break down, right? It'll probably blow an engine or it'll just get damaged, so it'll become less effective. The off season is like taking a week off during the races to rebuild your engine. It's good for recovery, it's good for your progress, and it also gives your mind a break as well.
That makes sense. So it's kind of like we talked about last week. I think it was last week. I know you weren't here for that. We talked about the deload and the importance. So it's almost like an elongated deload, but a little more intense. So not
Yes.
quite. Okay.
Now, there is also gray area in the off-season, on-season idea. If you adhere to the conjugate tactical principles or even the Westside conjugate principles, you can be competition ready within a month at all times. That's the way the training is set up. Not everybody can do that though, so people like to break it up into competition and non-competition seasons.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts on that, Robert?
It seems like it's a smart idea. I mean, you do have to try and play it to put your best foot forward, regardless of what sport it's in, whether it's football or powerlifting or whatever. And I can see how it would be helpful. The only thing that worries me is like people confusing having a long-term goal and thinking they need to be on season the entire time that they're working towards that goal, instead of realizing, like, if you're trying to hit a total that's 300 pounds heavier than what you're doing now, you don't have to stay on season the entire time.
No.
But there's times that you're going to be taking that deload, that off season, still concentrating on that goal, but it's during that lower rep or that lower work time.
Yep.
With the
So-
intensity levels?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the intensity levels would change. You're not worried so much about your technique. You want to maintain your technique, but during that off season, you want to build up, get stronger, find those different weaknesses, right, and build those up. You also want to prioritize your recovery because you can only get as good as what you can recover from, right? So essentially what you're saying is don't always be pushing for that next competition. Instead of shooting for a competition every month and raising your total by 10 or 15 pounds, taking that time off, we'll say 2 or 3 months in between, or we'll say 6 months between the competition, to give you that time to identify your weakness, build upon your weakness, and come back with we'll say a 30, 40, 50 pound PR for your total, right?
Yeah. Well, I think too, if we, before we finish up, if we look at our goal setting too, like Robert's saying. I'm surprised he didn't go.
I was waiting for you to
I
jump
know.
in.
Goals are my thing. So if we made a point when we're building out for that year or that season to say, okay, I'm going to build in these specific times of off season, then you're just going to be building yourself totally. And then you know, okay, this is the process, so I can trust that process.
Yep.
So makes sense to me anyway. That's a good point.
Follow the plan, trust the process.
Yeah, that's tough. Sometimes we get in our own ways.
We do.
Yep.
Guilty.
So do you guys have anything else on that topic?
I have nothing yet.
No, just trust it. When your coach or whoever puts you on an off season, no matter how amped you are, you have to trust that there's a method to the madness.
Yep.
Like they see the big picture. They're not looking at that meet in a couple of months. They're looking at what you're going to be able to do down the road, and they want you to be able to be at your best spot to get there. So you do need that recovery time. Everybody
Yeah.
needs it.
Yep.
I agree. Well, awesome. This was a great discussion, guys. Alrighty, thank you guys again so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
And as always, like and subscribe, and stay tuned for some YouTube live footage from when we actually get it going and start our training.